I now invite Professor Neeja Gupta Madam, Vice Chancellor, Sanchi University, Buddhist and Indic Studies. She is a dynamic personality, powered with excellence, who knows 9 languages, including Urdu, English, Marathi, Assamese, Russian, Sanskrit, and Prakrit. She has done extensive research in various editions of Ramayana and has to her credit more than 15 books and 100 research papers. I welcome you, ma'am, for your speech. Professor Neeja Gupta, madam.
Namaste.
Namaskar, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Honorable Vice Chancellors, Professor Viren Kumar Singh ji, Professor Rajneesh Kumar Shukla ji, Professor Tankeshwar Kumar ji, Honorable Dashora sir, a plethora of this galaxy, and very, very honorable keynote speaker, Adarniya Professor Kapil Kumar ji, Kapil Kapoor sir, respected my friend Professor Agrawal, and the galaxy of participants. First of all, from bottom of my heart, I extend my thankfulness for including me in this wonderful, wonderful seminar. This conference has set the required, filling up of the gap of the discourses when we discuss and we introspect the reasons what increased the spirit of nationalism during our freedom struggle. So when I was thinking about the topic, it's just mind-boggling. What a topic, what a span, what a scope to be talked about. And we fear what would be the contours that might be missed during these discourses. It has so many layers. There is the dating cannot be explained here. It goes up to prehistoric. When we talk of translation and the role of translation in the freedom struggle, how can we neglect our ancient most texts which were translated in the due courses of time? Whether they were translated due to the dharma, whether they were translated due to their knowledge systems, whether they were translated due to the colonization of the country, the reasons might be multiple. But the literature that was produced in India, whether it was in Sanskrit or Pali or Prakrit or in many other languages, it has reached to the world in multiple manners. Whether we talk about Al-Baruni, whether we talk about Brahmisphot Siddhant, Khandak Nayak, Panch Siddhantika, the literature by Varah Mihir, or we talk about the other literatures. Why should we restrict ourselves to 18th and 19th century only? So this particular topic itself is so wide, so major, and I'm looking ahead hearing Professor Kapil Kapoor sir on this topic, Professor Rajneesh Shukla ji on this topic, because they are the masters, it is their domain. I'm simply an observer who, like a very, very curious student, wants to know what the role of translation was. And to my mind, I would like to start with the very name of our country, which has undergone so many parivartan, from Jambudweep to Bharatvarsh, from Bharatvarsh to Hindustan to India. And today we are known, I think we are the only country who is known with so many names. And these all happened because of the text which were translated into different connotations, into different genre, into different layers of meanings, different purposes throughout the world. So we are known with those dimensions due to the translations. And I'm not talking only the translation of the text, because a text carries the culture. when the text is translated and it reaches out to different places, the cultures also reach. It's not only reading the text, it's the reading of the cultures. And that's how India is known to many other geographies of the world. Rather, it has set the tone of many struggles in the world. And I would like to mention here that we are not talking only about translating the text, we are also talking about translating the art, the music, the cultures, the traditions, and then what they were impacting, how they were setting the notes, how they were setting the moods, how they were setting the tones in other parts of the world where Indians had reached. Because the freedom struggle was not fought only with the given boundaries of India. The freedom struggle was fought at different places. The freedom struggle was fought by the diaspora or by those foreigners who were friendly to the diaspora or to the Indians. And in that particular aspect, we find that somewhere in Fiji, in Mauritius, in East Africa, in South Africa, in European countries, in Canada, in America, everywhere we find all these sprouts of nationalism towards India. What were the major reasons? I have worked a lot on Gandhi. I won't say a lot, but I have worked on Gandhi. And to my mind, Gandhi is the biggest translator. He actually got introduced to the Indian scriptures through translations only. When he was in Britain, he actually read Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures in translations, and then he realized how important it is to read Indian scriptures in original. He himself says, now I want to go back and learn Sanskrit so that I can read Bhagavad Gita in original. So his exposure to Bhagavad Gita, which became the inseparable book of Gandhi, was through translation only. And we know the translation of Bhagavad Gita happened in 1849. And that's how it reached to Britain. And on that, Tennyson wrote after that mood in memoriam, and how it set the tone of spirituality, Nishkam Karma, and many other parts of nuances of Gita which Gandhi had adopted in his life. But when Gandhi was reading Gita, he was also in contact with many other thinkers and writers of the world. They were also writing something very useful. Tolstoy in 1908 has written Letter to a Hindu. This was in response to the Sandas, who was actually talking about a revolutionary fight for freedom. When Tolstoy writes Letter to the Hindu, he was actually advocating the peaceful means. And that letter, when Gandhi, he reads that letter, he translates that into Gujarati. Another very important Gujarati translation Gandhi did was Ruskin's Unto This Last. And the beautiful name, the title what Gandhi gave to Unto This Last was Sarvodaya. And that's how the tone of multi-layered freedom struggle gets set in. But the third major translation which has impacted the freedom fight was Gandhi's own translation of Hind Swaraj. He wrote Hind Suraj in Gujarati. That was the word he kept, Suraj. And then from Hind Swaraj, he, on the advice of Tolstoy, when he translated into English, he changed the title, and then the title became Hind Suraj. There were many words which Gandhi could not translate or didn't want to translate. I'm just reading a part of his preface, what he says. He says, I'm quite aware of many imperfections in the original. The English rendering, besides sharing these, must naturally exaggerate them. Owing to my inability to convey the exact meaning of the original, some of the friends who have read the translation have objected that subject matter has been dealt in the form of dialogue. And there were many other words, certain words like that, which Gandhi actually kept as it is. Dhoti, Jat, Ladai, simply. The last chapter of Hind Swaraj, when Gandhi was concluding, he titles in Gujarati as Chutkaro, but in English, he changed it to conclusion. We all know Chutkaro in Hindi would mean Chutkara, but Gandhi didn't want to sprout that sort of controversy, so he changed the entire connotation of the word and he simply said conclusion. So translations are not only relevant when the Indian texts were being translated into different languages and they were creating a feeling of nationalism, it was also important and relevant when the Indian minds were reading the text and translations and they were formulating their own nuances, their own mindsets, their own feelings. We all know 1970, the Russian Kranti had a very big impact on the world. How did it reach to the world? We know how Bhagat Singh was reading Marx and other leaders. We know how the binaries were created between the capitalist and the bourgeois class, and the new forms of words were coined. And the Dalit word comes into existence around that time only. The way the missionaries were involved into translations, they were trying to reach out to the Indian minds. At that time, it gave so many ideas to Indians as well, that if they can come to us, why not to reach back? So translation among the scriptures is one thing, but translation reaching as the mind, reaching as a thought, reaching as emotion to the public was another reason. And the major reason was the rise of the middle class. Now the middle class was involved into the national activities. The three major authors which impacted the middle class mind were Tagore, Premchand, and Iqbal. They actually could read out the public feeling. They were generating the literature which was so very matchable to the emotions of the country. And then the translations which were happening at different platform, whether when Premchand was attending the progressive meets, or whether when Iqbal was writing about things in Urdu, where Gandhi says that from Gujarati to Hindi and from Hindi to Hindustani, and that's how the Hindustan word comes in existence, that the country which speaks Hindustani is becoming Hindustan. And that all comes from the language, the transformation of the language. And I said, when the language translates, it doesn't translate only the words, it actually translates the Atma. It's something like Parivartan to Anuvad, from Anuvad to Apbhransh, from Apbhransh to Anudharm, from Anudharm to Dharm, and from Dharm to Atma. You have to undergo so many transformations when we reach out to the impact of translation. So when Anand Math was written, Anand Math was actually the loud voice of those whispers which were happening already in the society. And when Bankim Chand Chatterjee was traveling from South Pargana to Calcutta, he saw all those greeneries and fields and all that natural beauty. So he wrote Sujalam Sufalam Malaya Shitalam Shasya Shyamala Mataram. He sent these lines to Rabindranath Tagore and said, I don't know how to start this. And Rabindranath Tagore said, oh, this looks like you are talking about the fields, about that matru, about that mata which gives us jivan. So the words Vande Mataram was given by Tagore to Bankim Chand. What were they translating? Were they translating, giving the only sentences which were written by Bankim Chand Chatterjee, and then it was just the filling of the blanks? Because Aurobindo, when he translated Bande Mataram, he said, "Oh mother, I bow to you." Now this whole thing is very, very dynamic. It has so much of momentum into it that like a lightning it would reach to both. It would reach to colonizers as well as it would reach to the people who are suppressed. So as much the suppressed people would absorb and adopt and get motivated, the similar force was over there with the colonizers who would like to diminish this whole feeling. So when the binaries were created by these literary words, whether it is Vande Mataram, whether it is Hindustan, whether it is Hind Swaraj, when the binaries were created in the general public, translation is an academic work. The academic works don't create revolutions. To create revolution, महाक्रांति के लिए महान आंदोलन चाहिए. आप किताबों में आंदोलन तभी ला सकते हैं जब उसको जन का समर्थन मिले, और जन समर्थन क्रिएट करने में ये जो दो तरह की प्रतिक्रिया हुई, एक जन समाज ने उन शब्दों को अपनाया और उन शब्दों के दमन करने के लिए कॉलोनाइजर्स ने उतना ही जोर लगाया, उसी से जनमानस बना. वो जो मानस बना है वो उसी मनशक्ति से बना जो इन ट्रांसलेटेड टेक्स्ट ने पूरे देश में एक साथ कम्युनिकेशन के, संचार के इतने साधन ना होते हुए भी कुछ शब्दों से जो ज्योति क्रिएट की, जो ऊर्जा क्रिएट की, जो एक रीच आई. और वो रीच सिर्फ भारत भूखंड में नहीं आई, वो सुदूर दक्षिण अफ्रीका में भी दिखती है, आपको गदर क्रांति में कनाडा में भी दिखती है, अमेरिका में भी दिखती है. इसी तरह जय हिंद, कुछ शब्द जो नॉन ट्रांसलेबल रह गए, जिनको हम ट्रांसलेट नहीं करते, जिनको हमने एज सच अडॉप्ट किया, एक्चुअली टू रिटेन दैट इन द ट्रांसलेटेड बुक्स, दे क्रिएटेड द मेजर फॉरवर्ड ऑफ द नेशनल फ्रीडम मूवमेंट. When just now sir said that Gitanjali's translation was not accepted. Why it was rejected? Was it rejected because someone in Europe was actually fine tuning it, or was it rejected because Gitanjali is not pure words? Gitanjali is sangeet, Gitanjali is beat, and when you translate Gitanjali into English, you actually miss that Bong Sangeet, Rabindra Sangeet, which actually caught the people's mind. वंदे मातरम का अंग्रेजी अनुवाद इसीलिए पॉपुलर नहीं हुआ क्योंकि उसमें उसके संगीत की धुन मिसिंग है. So when we get translated, we don't get translated the literal words. That's why Gandhi says in his preface very honestly that we are here for the summary of the translation. I am not translating my own Gujarati into English. ये भी एक बात देखने की बात है कि गांधी ने सबसे ज्यादा ट्रांसलेशंस 1890 से लेकर 1908 तक पढ़े, और गांधी का जिसको हम कहते हैं मैग्नम ऑप्टा वो आया 1909 में, हिंद स्वराज. तो ट्रांसलेटेड एक्टिविटीज का रिजल्ट क्या हुआ, वो क्या परमानेंस की तरफ जाता है, दिस इज ऑल्सो वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. लाला लाजपत राय, और इसी तरह जब गीता का मराठी का जो ट्रांसलेशन है उससे गीता रहस्य जो किताब बनी जिनसे तिलक ने गीता रहस्य लिखा, इन किताबों का भी हम बहुत बड़ा योगदान अपने राष्ट्रीय इसमें फ्रीडम के स्ट्रगल में हम देखते हैं. आई नो I am followed by the major scholars and major speakers. My only take to conclude my part of this speech today is that translation is not a singular activity. Translation is not a periodic activity. Translation is not a language-centric activity. Translation is universal. Translation is omnipresent. Whether we know or we don't know, we keep on translating the abstracts into positives. And that's how Amrita Shergill, when she presents her painting in France, she was translating the psyche of a woman, the same woman like Shakuntala we find in Mahabharata. You know, India has been a place of single mothers. Whether we talk of Sita, whether we talk of Shakuntala, we talk of Draupadi or Uttara or Subhadra or Hidimba, we have a lineage of single mothers. So when Amrita Shergill reaches out and presents her bold paintings over there, she is also translating that strength of being the boldness, maybe in some other manner. So we need to catch the nuances, we need to catch up and reach out to the genre, and we should not just limit the text to the textual translations. We have to understand the creation of the public mood and that inner strength, the way it has reached to the people. That's how we translate the translation. Once again, thank you so much, Professor Agrawal, to make me a part of this wonderful conference. I'll be gained, I'll be enriched, I'm sure. I'll be joining the other parts, but I'll be switching off the video. Forgive me for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. It is my pleasure. You accepted our invitation and decided to be amongst us. I can see and understand your very busy and preoccupied schedule, but then you made a promise and kept it. My gratitude to you, ma'am, and I look forward to several learning of items from you in future too. Once again, my gratitude.